Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us today. My name is Kevin Conlan. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales for NetX. Appreciate you carving out some time today for what I believe has been a very important topic and has become more important in time. And I'm joined today by Antwune Gray and Christian Mumma, who will be talking to you about different aspects of the topic, which is ransomware. A little background on myself and sort of a passion that I have is basically on the topic of ransomware and security. And I felt it was a really good forum for us to use as a launch point to talk to you today about ransomware as it relates to your organization and as it relates to some exposures you may be aware of or may not be aware of. So hopefully the intent here today would be to give you a little education on ransomware, but also equally as important about NetX as a company and some of the value that we bring to organizations like yours to help you either shore up against ransomware or to remediate against an attack if you're unfortunate enough to be attacked by a ransomware. So appreciate the opportunity again. We're going to go through the different components of ransomware and the framework around that. But before I get started, I want to give you a little background on NetX as a company. They've been around since 1997. Their roots are out of Symantec Corporation, of which Veritas was a part of, and they separated as two organizations about 15 years ago. Ever since they've come out on their own, NetX has been a platinum partner, which is the highest level distinction you can get because of accreditations and capabilities as it relates to the Veritas platform. And we're talking about today ransomware as it relates to a Veritas environment, because I think for those of you that don't know the metrics around this, will just give you some anecdotal information around the actual platform of Veritas. They have served about 80,000 customers worldwide. They're in 35 countries. They're in 87% of the Fortune 500, and they're in the top 10 of the top 10 financial services company around the globe. I used to run New York Metro for Veritas prior to joining NetX, and I was fortunate enough to have an audience with a lot of C-level executives in the Fortune 500. And one of the things that was commonplace in why they chose Veritas, both for a data protection platform, but even more importantly from a security perspective, was their history, their experience, and they're a trusted environment, right? So that anecdotally, I had a meeting with a CTO of a financial services organization about a year and a half ago, pre-COVID. And one of the things he shared with the CEO was the reason that he stays on Veritas is because they put trillions of dollars across the wire between New York and London, and they know it's going to get there, and they know it's going to be encrypted, they know it's going to be safe. So it says a lot about the platform. There's a lot of other competitive platforms that are out there, but Veritas still stays tried and true relative to the environment and providing good data protection. On the topic of ransomware, I just want to give you some anecdotal information before we get started with the actual slides and talk about it. The number of ransomware attacks is hitting about 4,000 a day, daily. That's a huge number, and obviously it's in the news every day right now. It's becoming more and more prevalent. Back 5 years ago, when I started the security practice, it was an awareness of ransomware, but it really wasn't that prevalent. Security obviously is always top of mind for any organization. The U.S. suffered 65,000 attacks last year. That's 7 attacks per hour, just to give you kind of an understanding of just how much this is ratcheted up over time. The average ransomware demand is about 170,000 per incident and about 700,000 to remediate completely. 60% of the breaches last year were a result of unpatched vulnerabilities for an organization. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can help as an organization, what we do, where the value comes in from NetX. But from a standpoint of our sweet spot as it relates to us engaging with an organization, we consult and we do assessments. And assessments can be anything from a security assessment, a pen test, a penetration test to show you where you're vulnerable and where your exposures are, data governance, Security is a generic platform. We're talking today about ransomware as it relates to the Veritas platform, but we have a much broader exposure to security. We can protect you from a O365 environment. We can talk about gateways and endpoint detection and a lot of those other components. And we'll more than likely have another webinar around that to go a little bit more broad than we will today. And then also talk about cloud and workload migration as that relates to securing your data. A lot of organizations today are looking to evolve to the cloud or have evolved to the cloud. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can protect the data, both from a data protection perspective, but also from a ransomware perspective, and how we can help you mitigate the risk, if you will. We're a nationally authorized Veritas trainer, so we have a full suite of training available to companies. We have a lab environment. We regularly do proof of concepts and demos, so you can use us for that. And the last bullet I'll touch on is that we provide managed services for both data protection as well as security. So we can do endpoint detection management for you. So if you had 1,000 employees and you wanted us to manage that for you, that's something we could offer to you. So I just wanted to put that out there to make you aware that we are a fairly broad platform. I consider our technical folks to be the best in the business. I've been around a long time, and I think that we have a really strong capability as it relates to being able to both consult and educate, and then help you sort of navigate the waters as it relates to you evolving in time. So with that, we're going to kick this off. I'm going to start off with Antwune Gray. Antwune, I'm going to kick it over to you. Take it away.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. So my portion of the webinar is basically going to talk about ransomware at its basics, ransomware 101, so to speak. So we'll level set a bit just so that everyone is on the same page. So what is ransomware? Ransomware is, as you see here on the screen, as defined by CISA, is a form of malware designed to encrypt your files. It basically renders the files on the system inaccessible. And in some cases, the goal of the ransomware attack is not always to actually get money, but potentially could serve as a distraction for other malicious purposes. These distractions could also be hiding a traditional attack against your network. It could be covering up traces of an earlier attack. Maybe they left footprints in the sand and they want to come back and comb over. So they basically lock you out, limiting your productivity, exposing your data, etc. A couple of points I want to point out here on this particular slide, and I'm not going to read these slides to you. I'll just leave them up for you so you peruse. But ransomware as a service is making the novice bad actor just as dangerous as the professionals, and even more dangerous in some cases that where the novice bad actor is really not visualizing the long-term benefit of actually following through on their word. They may lock your files, request a ransom, you pay the ransom, and you don't get the key to unencrypt your files. Paying could also inadvertently encourage this criminal activity. As a matter of fact, I was just reading an article, and I'll pause here for a second. With ransomware and with these attacks, you're having to constantly stay in the know. You're having to constantly read articles and things of that nature in order to know exactly where the new attack is actually coming from. So to continue on the point, though, new ransomware gangs, such as the dark side, they're actually receiving cryptocurrency investment from their peers. What this is going to do is it's going to give them the financial resources that most large organizations have to fight ransomware. They're going to be using this massive amount of money to actually attack you. So in that particular case, we want to make sure that that we have the best protections possible in place. Next, we'll talk about common infection vectors. So ransomware is primarily delivered through malicious attachments, via email, known as mouse spam. And this is this is why it's important to be sure to have some type of anti-spam protection in your environment, because although we want to make our users, part of our defense posture, making them our foot soldiers to be able to report these things, to recognize these things, they can get weary as well and overwhelmed by just the number of email messages that come into their mailboxes on a regular basis, and accidentally, although they're well trained, click on one of these email malicious payloads. Attack vectors also include network intrusion through poorly secured ports. RDP is one of the main culprits there. NetX has a secure remote control tool that will allow you to provide remote support, as well as remote work in some cases, to your staff with encrypted communication, logging, tracking, monitoring, and things of that nature. But it's important to be able to understand that you do have other tools available to you from the NetX portfolio that will allow you to sort of ward off some of this stuff here. And again, as you're looking at this particular slide, I want to reiterate that as by the FBI as well as DHS and the CISA department in particular, paying the ransomware is not going to guarantee that you're going to get your data back. There is a guarantee, and my partner Christian will talk about that guarantee process here in just a little bit. So let's talk about the ransomware process on the next slide. And again, this is sort of basic, but I just want to talk a little bit about how this works. So ransomware applications that you've heard in the news, such as CryptoLocker, CryptoWall, Locky, WannaCry was one of the big ones, which first appeared in 2017, GoldenEye, of the sort. They basically all work the same. So there's an initial access mechanism, right? Whether a user visits a malicious website and there's some malware downloaded in the background, or they click on that PDF attachment that says it's from accounts payable. Either way, we are infected with some sort of malicious payload, right? And what that does is it starts to move laterally through your network. If it avoids the antivirus software on your system, you may not know that you actually got infected last week. It could happen in the background and silently move through your network, collecting credentials, etc., elevating privileges, communicating out to the attacker's command and control server, exfiltrating some data, right? And we'll see on a couple of the following slides where the victim's data was actually extracted and was used as a selling point to get the ransom paid, right? We're going to expose your data if you don't pay the ransom. Once the command and control system has been notified or connected to, then your data is going to be encrypted, and a ransomware note will be presented to provide detail on how to pay the ransom. Generally, what's going to happen is the ransomware products are going to avoid manipulating or encrypting the system files, because they want to ensure that they have a sure way of getting not only the ransom, but giving you the instructions on how to send that Bitcoin payment. Generally, that's going to be through a Tor browser. That Tor browser is basically a free and open source software that basically enables anonymous communication over the web, right? So it routes traffic through these volunteer networks. There's about 7,000 relays to basically hide a user's location and other identifying information, just in case you're trying to track, the communication of the bad actor. So you're going to go ahead and send your payment through the Tor browser to the bad actor. Again, it's generally going to be in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is untraceable. Once you've paid the ransom, you may, and I want to emphasize may, receive the private key to decrypt your data. But again, we want to ensure that you're not having to pay. If you invest up front, then you're not having to invest on the back end to a bad actor, again, encouraging these actions. So let's look at some recent notable attacks. Acilion attacked in February of 2021. Multiple customers received an email from the cloud ransomware gang threatening to publish stolen information. Again, exfiltration happened. Pull the information out. All right, we can prove to you that we have your information, and if you don't pay us, we're going to display this or put it out on the dark web. So in this particular case, the vendor as well as the customers were extorted. So what's known as double extortion. Acer attacked in 2021. The REvil gang published images of banking communication and other files stolen from Acer. Again, extracting that information and threatening to publish it. Okay, but guess what? This is old news, and this just happened in February, March. Let's take a look at some additional ones. Colonial Pipeline, big in the news, all over the place. Everybody was impacted by this up and down the East Coast because of gas prices. They were attacked in April of 2021. Again, big news. You couldn't turn on the local news here in Georgia without seeing a Colonial Pipeline story. The Dark Side gang targeted billing and internal business systems. They paid $4.4 million in Bitcoin, and you can't see my air quotes. FBI recovered that money or that ransom. I don't have any proof of that, but that's what's out there. JBS Foods attacked in May of 2021. Same gang. JBS paid $11 million in ransom, and according to CBS News at the time, that was the largest ransomware payment of all time. But guess what? That's old news. Let's take a look at one more. Recent attack. Kaseya attacked in July of 2021, this month, right around Independence Day holiday. Supply chain ransomware attack leveraged a vulnerability in the VSA component of Kaseya. 50 direct customers of Kaseya were impacted, and between 800 and 1,500 small businesses were basically locked down. REvil offered the decryption key for $70 million in Bitcoin. And I'm sure that next month we'll have another big breaking news ransomware attack. So let's go and see now what happens when NetX and Veritas is actually involved or has a seat at the table with the customer. So a large utility agency in Washington, D.C. was attacked in May of 2021. The VMware guests were encrypted. Now, VMware is great. Virtualization is one of the greatest things since sliced bread. But now we have a smaller footprint to actually infiltrate, and we can then encrypt all of your guests. We can lock all of your systems down. But they did not know that NetX and Veritas were in the house. NetX had just recently implemented Veritas NetBackup. The customer was fully recovered and running the same day. No ransomware was paid. So no $11 million, no $70 million. That wasn't paid. Bad actors and the attack vector was not actually disclosed to NetX. If so, and we could publish that, we would certainly put that out there. So if we go to the next slide, we can answer the question, hey, how can I protect my network? To help organizations protect against ransomware, NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology, actually provides some guidelines. And we'll see later on that NetX has a solution in its portfolio that maps to each one of those sectors within the NIST framework. But just as a very basic, use antivirus software. As long as you've been in IT, we've been told make sure you have antivirus. keeping your systems fully patched. Kevin mentioned in the very beginning that most of the vulnerabilities come through unpatched software. Remember the credit reporting agency out of Georgia, unpatched Apache caused a data breach. Whitelist your applications. Back up your data and store it offline. This is your last line of defense, and you want to make sure that your last line of defense is absolutely solid. Also, as I mentioned earlier, train your users. Make your users a part of your security posture. Make them foot soldiers in your army. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So again, the NIST framework in NetX, is you'll notice here around the circle, I won't read them all off to you, but we should identify the components of within our environment. An unmanaged component or unmanaged node is a security vulnerability. You can't protect it if you don't know that it's there. Protect your data, back up your data, protect your operating systems. You want to make sure that there's ongoing detection so that if there's an anomaly in network traffic or what have you, that information is logged and is not consumed by a lot of noise. So you want to make sure that you have a system in place for log aggregation. Have a secure method of connecting out to a device that you have possibly isolated because you suspect there has been a breach. So you want to ensure that you're using something other than the built-in remote control tool that could have possibly been breached as well. You want to make sure that we have a way of responding. I mentioned the isolating a system, taking advantage of NetX professional services, whether it is for endpoint management, security, or as you saw, the value of NetX professional services implementing Veritas. And the ability to restore your data or restore an image of the system so that, again, you're not having to be concerned with actually paying the ransom to get your data back. Okay, a little planning up front will help go a long way. Now, I'll turn it over to my partner, Christian Mumma, who will talk more about the Veritas portfolio, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Antwune. Folks, so we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, but as we move along the presentation here, feel free to type your questions in the chat. I see Clovis, you asked about the utility customer that Antwune was referencing and how much data they lost. I can't say how much data they lost, but they were impacted for less than 24 hours. Fortunately, they had everything running on NetBackup appliances, so we didn't run into any issues where NetBackup servers got encrypted because of the protection that the appliances have inherently and all the security software on them. And then for their mission critical VMs, we used instant access to power on VMs from a previous backup image, from the backup image the night before. So they were up and running right away. And then they just used vMotion to migrate them back to VMware in the background. For the less critical systems, we just did traditional VMware restores. So they were down for less than a day and paid $0 or 0 Bitcoins in ransom. Okay, back to the presentation of the 5 pillars that Antwune was discussing in the NIST framework. The Veritas suite mostly fits into 3. Those are protect, as we are commonly speaking about NetBackup, would fit into that pillar. Detect, where you can actually find where you've been infected with ransomware or find things that don't seem right in your infrastructure. And then recover. So protect is proactive, detect is proactive, and recover is a reactive exercise. So we'll start with protect. As Antwune mentioned before, Data protection is your last line of defense, and backups are key to an organization's ability to recover. Obviously, you can't run a restore if you don't run a backup. And I was looking at the list of attendees. I think most of you are already Veritas NetBackup customers and some of our customers. So we talk about this at length. If there's anything else you'd like us to follow up on, we'd be happy to do demos as well. So NetBackup, as most of us know, is an enterprise-grade backup and recovery software. It's an excellent solution to be included into an enterprise's cybersecurity strategy. It streamlines data protection and management, and we have footprints at both the edge, the core, and the cloud. So NetBackup works well at a remote office, in a core data center, or protecting data in the cloud where the cloud provider backup solutions tend to fall short. NetBackup adds the widest support from edge core to cloud with 800 plus data sources that it can protect, over 1,400 different storage targets, and over 60 cloud providers that we can write to as well. NetBackup Immutable Storage is actually one of the key components to protecting against ransomware. This was a feature that was released with NetBackup 9 in the beginning of the year. In the storage platforms that we're able to write to immutable storage on, the number of platforms keep expanding, so we're supporting more and more with each release. And essentially, immutable storage is write once and read many. So just like the old worm tape drives, you can write to a disk pool that is immutable, but then that data cannot be expired or cannot be changed. There are a couple exceptions to that. You can elect to be able to expire data, but never change it. The platforms that are currently available for this, for on-premise storage, we can deploy Flex appliances, and they have a separate immutable storage container along with NetBackup containers. There's a range of appliance form factors, again, from edge to core to cloud. The Flex 5150 is 15 terabytes. The 5250 goes from 9 terabytes to 420 terabytes. And the 5350, which is sort of the flagship product, goes from 120 terabytes to almost 2 petabytes. Third-party hardware is also supported. Right now, Data Domain is supported, as well as NEC HydroStore. You just need to make sure that you use the plugins, the OSD plugins on your NetBackup media servers. And then as far as cloud goes, right now we support AWS S3. It's referred to as retention lock, is the feature in S3 storage, and that will be expanded to Azure coming up soon. And what this means is you can ensure that once your backup is written to that disk, that it won't be deleted or changed. Second new feature that not everyone is aware of to protect against ransomware is multi-factor authentication. So this operates through the web interface of NetBackup. It will also integrate with the Java GUI as well. The Java GUI just makes an API call to the web interface. This works with SAML 2.0. It's been tested with ADFS, Shibboleth, Azure Active Directory, Okta, Ping Federate, and a couple other smaller ones. So a lot of folks are using this to protect their systems from bad actors. Also, enhanced access management. This is one of the new features in NetBackup with the web interface. The robust role-based access control is being picked up a lot. One thing you'll see with the new web interface is that it's not just geared towards backup admins. Workload admins are able to use it as well. So, for instance, you can allow your DBAs access to initiate backups, maybe before they perform a change control. Maybe they want to back up a database before a schema update, something like that. And also, you can allow them to perform their own restores. But with that, you don't want to give them the keys to the kingdom and allow them access to all the other workloads and management of NetBackup. So role-based access control is very granular and very modular, and you can allow other administrators on other teams access to very specific portions of the web interface, even down to specific assets. So if you wanted to allow, maybe a SQL DBA access to restore any virtual machine that has the letters SQL in the VM name, you could do that as well. It gets very granular and very modular. Encryption. So all communications starting with NetBackup 8.0 and later encrypt all network traffic. And there are options as well to encrypt data at rest on disk. So now we're using TLS 1.3, which is much faster and more secure. That goes across all backups, all replications, restores, all network communication, like I was saying before. And we can now integrate with third-party TMS providers. Major ones that have been tested are Thales, IBM, Oracle Key Vault. You can see a list of them on the screen there. Veritas's own encryption on disk is AES 256-bit, and it's FIPS 140-2 certified. So you can rest assured that data is encrypted and can't be read by a bad actor. So moving on to the next pillar, that would be detect. There's a few different products in the Veritas suite that help us do that. It's nice if you are a NetBackup customer, because that means that pretty much nightly we're ingesting your data. And there's some things that we can do with that as far as the metadata from your backups are concerned. So the first product, someone you may be aware of, is Data Insight. It goes more than just its integration with NetBackup. Data Insight has several features which would warrant its own presentation. But it does have the ability to ingest the metadata from NetBackup and look for key signatures that may signal an infection of either a virus or malware. NetBackup itself, starting with NetBackup 9.1, has an anomaly detection. We'll speak about that a little bit more here in a few minutes. But NetBackup now has its own detection for malware. And then Aptar is a very robust reporting utility. It can report on things from cloud to file systems to disk arrays, but it does a lot with reporting on backups, especially NetBackup. So we use all three of these tools, or any subset of them or combination of them, to look for any signs of data that might be encrypted or any signatures that would signal us that there's a bad actor in your environment. Again, this would be a proactive activity. So this is something that you're doing regularly to keep an eye out and make sure that you don't get infected, or that you are not infected. So the anomaly detection that comes with NetBackup now takes a look at data points such as file count, the backup size, how long it takes to run a backup, and basically uses AI to detect any anomalies. And then it alerts you to them through the web interface. Then you can go in, do your own investigation and report it as a false positive, or you may actually find data that's being encrypted. Another key point would be the deduplication rate of an individual backup job. So as we all know, encrypted data and compressed data does not deduplicate well at all. So if a virtual machine or a file system or some asset is backing up regularly with over 90% deduplication, and then one day it drops to 60%, and then the following day it's less than 10%, that's a pretty good sign that data is being encrypted or compressed or maliciously manipulated in one way or another. So it's nice that we can take those data points that we've had for a while and analyze them with AI to determine if there is a risk there or if something malicious is happening. And Data Insight, again, has a plugin to NetBackup where it can collect that metadata and compare it to information that it collects from other data sources. And this allows you to monitor for threats and take action against it. Data Insight also integrates with Enterprise Vault. So there's multiple integrations across the entire Veritas suite. And then finally, risk mitigation analysis with Veritas Aptar. Aptar creates like a baseline of known successful backups and compares that to what it sees elsewhere. It's also nice because Aptar will work with more than one master server. So if you have several environments, you get reporting, very detailed reporting from one pane of glass, and you can share information or compare information across several different environments at the same time. It's also good for things like compliance, making sure that you're complying with, say, HIPAA or SOX or any of the other compliance needs out there. The last pillar of the framework we'll cover is recover. Probably the most important one. And that's the one where you can get your data back in case something bad does happen. So at this point, NetBackup comes with multiple ways to recover a variety of workloads. We can fit with just about any RPO or RTO out there. If you haven't seen it, please ask us about the Resiliency Platform. It's a great way to orchestrate your recovery and also test your recovery. So it's a great way to perform DR tests. It also has the ability to replicate so that you can recover VMs from a replicated copy rather than a backup. A new feature for NetBackup with VMware is instant rollback. And that's where a VM that is in place can be rolled back from a snapshot rather than performing a restore. And you can select multiple points in time. So let's say you want to take a checkpoint every 15 minutes. You can roll that VM back to any of those granular checkpoints. Also, a new feature with NetBackup is continuous data protection for VMware. This uses an I/O filter, much like the replication of a VRP, and splits I/Os as they go to a running VM and stores them elsewhere. With that, you can select a very granular point in time to recover, either files from a VM or actually restore the entire VM back to. Instant access is a feature we've been talking about quite a bit over the past year or so. Instant access is similar to a feature that was present in NetBackup previously called instant recovery. The primary difference between instant access and instant recovery is the way that NetBackup builds the file system that it presents to whichever workload it's recovering. So now it's much more efficient. We can do many more like VMs or SQL databases concurrently. As I mentioned before, we used that quite a bit when we recovered the customer that got infected by ransomware. We brought VMs online in less than a minute with instant access, and then moved them over in the background to their production VMware. In cloud and on-prem snapshots, NetBackup has, since 8.3, we've integrated what was previously a standalone product called CloudPoint. That's now a feature of NetBackup, and it's a really fast way to manage snapshots across either disk arrays or cloud compute environments, and manage it all under one pane of glass on your NetBackup master server. Bare metal recovery has been around for quite a while, and that's where we can recover a physical machine to dissimilar hardware. We don't do this too much anymore, but we still do it. Where if say you have a Dell, DL3 or a HP DL380 Gen 7, and something happens to it, you need to recover to a Gen 8. VMware would actually load drivers and make sure that a Windows machine doesn't blue screen, for example, when you recover it. Also, I would say what's probably the most popular use case for VMware right now is physical to virtual conversions. So any physical machine that you back up and collect VMware information can be converted to a virtual machine in VMware as the restore process. And then, of course, there's traditional recovery where you're doing restores to a NetBackup agent. So the reason why I go through this list is just to show how many different ways there are that we can perform restores, depending on what tier a workload is in. It's important to your environment, balanced with the cost of providing that RPO and RTO. And the Resiliency Platform, as I mentioned before, helps us scale that. So Resiliency Platform provides orchestration. You can group workloads together and click one button that performs multiple restores or brings VMs online from a replicated copy. It integrates with InfoScale. So if you have global clusters set up, something like an Oracle database or other workload, VRP can help orchestrate that. If you have a 3-tiered application that, say, it has Oracle virtual machines running on the back end, Java middleware tier, and then IIS servers as your presentation layer, VRP can orchestrate the recovery of those in the proper order and with different methods. So maybe your Oracle databases you want to replicate and have VRP bring those up right away. But your IIS servers, web servers are almost stateless, so it's fine to recover those from last night's backup. VRP can recover that entire set of tiers as if they were just one restore. Instant rollback for VMware is what I was speaking about before. That reduces recovery time from ransomware. So this is where you don't have to perform a restore. You can just roll back a VM to the point in time before the encryption started happening. And again, NetBackup stores all of those checkpoints in an efficient manner. CDP for VMware uses the IO filter, as I was mentioning before. It also provides stun-free backups. So if you're having trouble with quiescing a virtual machine before you back it up, CDP will help back up without experiencing that stun. There's some customers that when they start to take a VMware snapshot and they quiesce the VM, it basically flushes all in-flight IO. Sometimes that may affect an application running on that VM. We see that sometimes with SQL or DB2. So CDP will help protect against that and lower your RPO and RTO.
Yeah, great job, Christian and Antwune. Thank you very much. So, folks, we talked through a lot of information here. There's obviously it's a very comprehensive platform, but we didn't cover everything, obviously, right? And so I want to direct you a couple of things before we even get into the Q&A. If you visit our website, which is www.netxinc.com, we have a free ransomware white paper available to you. It's on the front page, the landing page when you get there. If you wanted to talk to us a little bit more broadly around your concerns or challenges you may have, we can do it one of two ways. If you're on the website, you can go to the solutions page at security, and then just enter your information, and we'll reach out and contact you. I'll also send an email out to everybody that's on this call today with my contact information. You can reach out to me, and I'll set you up with the appropriate individuals to, talk through whatever the topic may be. One of the things Christian talked about is we have obviously a lab environment. We can do proof of concepts. We can do demos. We'd love to talk to you about a potential doing an assessment for you if that's something you're interested in. We do that quite frequently, and it sort of exposes you to a lot of challenges that you may not be aware of, right? So thank you all again for being on today. Hopefully you found this productive and useful. We will be having other webinars in the future. We'd love your input. If you want to send me a note, just tell me you enjoyed it, or if you'd like to have other topics added to this, we would love to get your feedback. But appreciate everybody's time, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.